Yes, okay. And we have a meeting where two of our members, Gary Martin is at the Santa Clarita Valley Water Agency Boardroom, and Tony Estromera is at Valley Water Headquarters Boardroom. So now I've called it to order. Could we please have a roll call?
Gladly. Good afternoon, everyone. President Palmer.
Here.
Director Millibar.
Here.
Director Martin.
Present.
Thank you. Director Luna. Director Estromera.
Aye.
Thank you. Director Chang.
Here.
Ron Apdawi. Excellent.
Okay, at this point, everybody, we are going to go into closed session. So keep your shirt on and we're going to be back in a bit.
Back about approximately 2 o'clock.
About 2 o'clock, yeah. So if you have time to get a cup of coffee.
And President Palmer, just before we go into closed session, just confirming there isn't any requests to speak on the closed session items. It doesn't look like there are.
Okay, great. And we will have public comment toward the end of the board meeting. So there you go.
Okay.
Okay, President Palmer, we are back on.
Oh, great. Okay, so we've just come out of closed session and we have nothing to report. So let's move on. We'll open the regular meeting and would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Madam Chair, if I could just announce my attendance, Miguel Luna.
Ah, yes, Miguel Luna is here and I'm so happy. This is the most we've had in like a really long time. This is great. Okay, let's start. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, here we go. All right, so our first order here is approval of the minutes. This is the minutes of August 17th, 2023, regular meeting minutes. There was a little bit of a change there. There were a couple little names misspelled and they have been fixed. So yes, do we have a approval?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh, wait, we have people who are on Zoom, so we have to do a roll call vote. Thank you so much. Okay, that smile, yes, okay. So let's do a roll vote.
President Palmer.
Yes.
Director Millibar.
Yes.
Director Martin.
Yes.
Luna.
Aye.
Director Estromera.
Aye.
Director Chang.
Aye.
Director Ron Apdawi.
Yes.
All right, meeting minutes approved. Thank you. President Palmer, alternate director Weed has his hand up.
Okay, alternate director Weed, yes, please.
Quick request that be noted that my attendance for this meeting as an alternate director in the minutes for the current meeting. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And do we have any other alternate directors who should be noticed?
Director Keegan.
Barbara Keegan is here?
Yes.
Okay, then let's notice her too.
We also have here in the room alternate director Titcher. And I also believe I saw alternate director Dan Fleury earlier.
Yes, I'm on.
All right,
good.
thank you.
Excellent. I'm so glad that all these alternate directors can make it. Okay, great.
That's all the alternate directors.
And that's
that
it?
we have.
All right, so we have
Participating
a really full virtual and actual room today. Okay, moving on to our discussion items. Now, basically our discussion items, we have a few of them and they are all information only. So let us begin then with A.
Thank you, President Palmer. We're going to start with our monthly board report. Let Claudia get that up on the screen. So this is part of your packet. We're going to start with section 1, work performed in September of 23. A couple of items I'd like to just point out and direct our attention to, starting with program management. You'll notice the second to last bullet, continue implementation and training of standard operating procedures and management plans. This is the subject of an update I'll be giving next as item B of the discussion item. So we'll go into that in a bit more detail and provide more context. We did submit our draft annual report to the Delta Conveyance Office last month, so that's great. This is a reflection of our decision at this point to no longer extend task orders past the end of the fiscal year. We're actually able to get our draft report done, and we plan to submit that final this month. But as a result, because we have not finalized, we still have the financials from last year in the monthly report, and I'll touch on those in just a minute. Moving on to administration. We have the ongoing activities that you're all very familiar with to support our hybrid meeting platform, as well as our other activities that are going on. We have an item I'd like to point out with the logistical support for alignment tours. Again, this is a tee up for the outreach group. We've got our outreach team here represented today, and they're going to speak to a lot of the activities going on. But some of that is about the alignment tours, which have been going really well. Engineering activities continue to be the primary work we do right now, is supporting DWR's evaluation of alternatives as they work their way through the draft environmental document. We have begun preparation of an update to our engineering project report. This will really just be a document that supplements the draft issued as part of as an accompaniment to the draft EIR. This is going to just capture any revisions or updates to the engineering project report facilities associated with the concept designs as they evolve through the public comment period of the draft EIR. And then moving down into fieldwork, our fieldwork team has completed the summer program. So all the fieldwork associated with summer is done. They're now just finishing up the laboratory testing and reporting activities, and then gearing up for our fall program, which would be the last program conducted under the initial study mitigated negative declaration. Claudia, if we could move now to, let's skip over. I'm going to skip over section 2, community engagement, because we have so many of our outreach folks here with us today. I'll let them talk about that when we get to it. So Claudia, if we could go to section 3, budget, please. So we have our approved budget of 40.44 million for this fiscal year. We have issued through task orders and contracts a total amount of 32.5 million so far. So we're still sitting on a total reserve of about 8 million. Some of that, the vast majority of that is just waiting pending DWR's decision about the project, and we will reconsider our scope for the second half of the fiscal year. Currently, we are forecasting an EAC that would fully expend the budget, but our typical process would be to revisit that midway through the year. So around January, we'll reset on how our costs to date are stacking up and whether we're going to have, some sort of underruns and things that we want to start to manage from that point. We could also, that's when we tend to reset scope and realign contracts, because we work on this fiscal year cycle that has hard start and stop dates. It makes sense to have a midpoint check-in to kind of reset so that we're not just delaying all of that to the end of the fiscal year. It kind of creates a lot of changes at the end of the year, and it helps us to kind of get in front of it partway through the year and see if we need to redirect our resources. Now I would like to go, Claudia, I think I want to stop on the budget cash flow plot, please. I stop here only to point out, I think this board's probably gotten used to seeing actuals shown in gold that tend to not necessarily match the projections as well. We lay these projections out at the beginning of the fiscal year. It's based on what we think could happen if we were in a position to burn the entire budget for that fiscal year. As it stands right now, we're actually coming in pretty close for the first 2 months of the year. So it looks like things are pretty well on track so far. And you can see the uptick in activities reflected in the second half of the year. That is just assuming a full expenditure of the budget, but we will reset that when we hit that January timeframe. So now within the report, I think we shift to the FY 22-23 financials. So this is still the report out from last fiscal year. We do this just to still provide transparency on where we sit with last year's budget. It is possible that some of these numbers could change a little bit as we get final invoices and really button up things. These have not moved since you saw them last. So the numbers here are going to look familiar. We had our initial budget last year of 31.16. We committed of that budget 25.3, and then built into that committed amount is the transfer that we moved back, after the closeout of last fiscal year, we rolled over 488,000 into the current budget to cover the completion of the last spring's investigative work, the laboratory testing and reporting. So we sit here still with an underrun from last fiscal year of 5.33 million. Once we finalize the annual report, we will no longer be including this report out in the monthly report. The last place I wanted to skip to, Claudia, would be the overall schedule, section 5, please. So we have our program management team that continues to work on the support activities. As I mentioned, this is the program management plans, SOPs, training, overall programmatic schedule. There's a lot happening within the program management team. The engineering team, as I mentioned, continues to prioritize the permit support to DCO, as well as progressing any supplemental concept validation studies. We've also got the support to the fieldwork activities, schedule and outreach, all of that. The engineering team provides a lot of resources to various activities within the program. And then you can see on the bottom half of the schedule, the different programs that I've referenced. The spring program, we're still wrapping up the laboratory analysis and documentation. Summer program, we've actually completed the field work, but what remains is the lab analysis and documentation. And then in terms of the fall program, we're just about to kick that off and are gearing up for the environmental clearances and everything that needs to happen in order to get those programs underway. So that concludes my summary, President Palmer, but would welcome any questions.
Questions from the board? No? How about on Zoom? Any questions coming in? Nope. Okay. Do we have any public comment?
President Palmer, we have not received any requests for public comment.
Great. Then I believe that takes us on to the next section.
Okay, great. I'll wait for the presentation to pull up. This is the DCA programmatic governance update. So go ahead. Next slide, please. So the objective of this work is to ensure that we have program management policies and procedures that align with DCA requirements as the team continues to progress through the program initiation phase, but also we have an eye towards the transition to the program delivery phase. We started this work by really digging into our current policies and procedures and plans with a real focus on quality management, health and safety, risk management, and our overall structure optimization. Next slide, please. So in terms of the foundational documents, this is part of the underpinning of everything we do. And, I do think it's worthwhile talking about in this setting. We have the JPA, the Joint Powers Agreement, reconstituted in December of 2020 with 16 participating public water agencies. Our other pillar, not to get too cute here, but is the Joint Exercise of Powers Agreement executed in May of 2018. We're on our 7th amendment of that document, most recently in December of 2022. This lays out the roles and responsibilities of DWR and the DCA. And then the bylaws amended in 2021 to align with the Joint Powers Agreement and as well as DCA governance. Next slide, please. And I will note as we're moving on, all of these documents are available on the DCA public website. So if there's any interest, all of those are available. So we started our programmatic analysis with really a gap analysis, looking at what we have in place now, where we felt like we needed to improve, build upon things that were already working well, or maybe we had, a steeper hill to climb on some subjects. What you see on the right-hand side, you do not need to be able to read it. The point here is we're communicating the individual 35 outputs or plans that were identified through the gap analysis. They fall in a range of categories, beginning at the top, excuse me, with program governance and continuing down in more detailed elements of the program. We laid these out over the next several years. The shaded areas that you see on the right-hand side identify when we would be putting in serious effort to update these plans and what quarter that would occur, and then when we would need to be transitioning into sort of a training mode. And then there's the implementation, which is kind of the unshaded portion of what you see. There's a lot that's summarized on this graphic. It's got our perceived level of effort, just in terms of what we think, kind of where we are now and what's it going to take to get that piece stood up the way we'd like. We've got the level of maturity identified. This was just kind of a qualitative assessment of what we have in place now. How good do we feel about it? And how far do we need to go to get it to the place that it will ultimately need to be? As a result of all this, we identified 26 priority plans and procedures that we wanted to either develop or update during this year. So it says next year, but at the time that was, a lot of this work is now behind us. And we've identified a number of internal milestones, which you can see on those vertical orange lines that kind of cut through the plot. Next slide, please.
Brett,
Yeah.
quick question. What
Sure.
does the LOE stand for and what are the
Yeah,
dots 1, 2, 3?
it's a relative level of effort. And so rather than trying to get too specific, we just kind of wanted to flag for ourselves when we communicated how we were going to tackle this. What do we think and this was sort of an agreed upon and debated topic, kind of where we landed with respect to level of effort. So how big a lift is it? More dots, bigger lift. Yeah. Any other questions? I know there's a lot on this plot.
Thank you. Just a quick one here. As new best practices come out in these kind of areas of planning, what's the DCS process, which they kind of revise or review their current planning?
So we do have a continuous improvement element to this. So we really needed to think about and document that as well and create a process. And we do plan at a minimum to revisit all of these annually. Any other questions on this plot? Okay, next slide, please. So these are all the plans that were updated or developed in fiscal year 22-23. So of the 26 plans that we identified as priorities, 16 were really considered the top priority. And so those are listed on the right-hand side. Some of these plans already existed and just required significant or insignificant updates. Others were entirely new plans. Those plans that are in italics on the right-hand side are the new plans. So you can see those that did exist in some form and those that we needed to create entirely from scratch. At this point, all 16 of these plans have been shared with Delta Conveyance Office and approved from their perspective to be in compliance with all of our governing documents. Next slide, please. So the next piece is training and implementation of those PMPs. So the point here is to identify all of the training needs required to implement the plans, policies, and SOPs, develop and launch webinars, online modules, and other platforms for each plan and policy. To date, we have rolled out 9 of 16 training plans. So that's pretty good, 56% of the scheduled training, and we plan to complete the rest during November. As we continue working through, we'll further develop and refine the webinars, the job aids, training materials. We're bringing on a training platform to help us organize all of this so that it's can start to really take a more cohesive feel. And then as part of our continuous improvement, we will continuously be evaluating the training effectiveness and adopt any recommendations that we collect internally from the team. Next slide, please.
Do these apply to all our consultants?
Yes, they do. Yeah.
They're their own entities, but this is part of the contract that they.
That is correct. They are all their own entities and they have all their own policies, but we're an organization that has a lot of specific requirements. And so these are all specific to our needs. And so, yeah, it applies to all the participants in the program.
Thank you.
Have to fit in, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
So in terms of next steps, we have 19 more PMPs for phase 2 identified, 10 of which will be new plans. The remaining will be updates. So part of our continuous improvement process, as previously mentioned, will be to revisit all the approved plans on an annual basis at a minimum and make sure they're up to date. And then we are rolling out a learning management system as we speak. We're just starting to move that process forward so that we can further improve how staff accesses these plans and policies and gets trained up on them. Next slide, please. So that completes my update. Would be happy to take any additional questions.
Questions from the board? None in the room. How about, I see Director Martin's hand is up.
Thank you, President Palmer. Graham, couple of questions on the preparation of the plans. First of all, I appreciate the presentation. I thought it's an impressive list of plans that we've already completed and are still to continue on with. Were these plans prepared by the DCA team or by consultants thereof?
So, well, that's a fun, I guess that's an interesting question. I would say they're all prepared by the DCA team, but then again, we are all contractors to the DCA. But none of these, how about if I say it this way, Director Martin, none of these were essentially lifted from our consultant programs. These are all made specifically for our program and for our organization. And they were all, written to be tailored to that. So none of these were just adaptations of what already exists in our consultant teams, other SOPs and programs.
Very good. Thank you. The second question is, who is doing the training for the plan?
So that's all internal. We
All
have
internal,
different,
okay.
yeah, all internal. We have different plan leads who are responsible for training. I have responsibilities to do that, and others certainly, our quality lead, health and safety, whatever it may be, has the point position of making sure preparing the training and hosting it. And then there's a lot of administrative support to make sure that the training is conducted in a way. We're recording those training sessions, creating webinars out of them. And then it's also being expanded using the learning management system to start to take advantage of other resources within that program. So it's a combination of individual responsible staff and then a lot of support from the administrative team.
Very good. Thanks, Graham. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions from our Zoom folks? Nope. Okay, do we have any public comments?
President Palmer, we do not.
The next, and which I'm looking forward to.
Thank you. I will introduce item 6C. Our senior leadership spotlight is Valerie Martinez. She's our DCA communications manager. And I look forward to Valerie introducing herself formally to the board.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for providing this opportunity for me to introduce myself. As a communications person, I'm really used to being behind the scenes. So this is awkward, but thank you. This is good.
It's good for you. Now you know.
There you go. So I believe, given what we do, what I do in terms of talking to community, talking to, providing those public facing materials, I think it's important to understand kind of what my story is, where I come from. So I am Latina. I grew up working class in Montebello and unincorporated Whittier in Southern California. I was the first in the family to graduate from college. Dad was a Teamster. He worked the same job from the Monday after he graduated from high school at El Rancho in Pico Rivera till the time he retired at 65. And he drove a forklift at a grocery warehouse. My mom worked in schools. She was a classified employee. I was raised bilingual. My parents were from Zacatecas and from Juarez. My parents, from a social justice standpoint, I definitely grew up, again, union, understanding what was happening with Cesar Chavez and in the Central Valley. There's also kind of an environmental justice component. I grew up, my grandparents, on a hot day, we could smell the Monterey Park landfill down the street. And my parents grew up down the hill from the Puente Hills landfill. And we were also kind of nestled between two freeways. So there's a lot of that going on. I was also a newspaper and a legislative staff, newspaper reporter and a legislative staffer, where I really focused a lot of my efforts on disadvantaged communities, socioeconomically disadvantaged folks, ensuring there's equity for, with regard to education, immigration, healthcare, jobs, crime. So that's the foundation. So moving forward, I'll tell you my dirty secret is that I actually started out college as an engineering major. And I don't know what to do about this. Thank you. And then freshman year, material science happened. So that was loud and proud. I am a writer. So I graduated with a journalism degree and a political science degree from the University of Southern California. I worked my way through school, pretty much working full-time throughout. I worked at JPL as a draftsperson and technical writer. I had an internship, a great internship with Fernando Del Rio. And none of you are old enough to know who Fernando Del Rio was. He is doing editorials for what was then KHJTV, is now KCAL 9. And I was doing his writing and producing for him. And then I went to work at the Herald Examiner as a general assignment reporter, and the Press Telegram in Long Beach as a reporter covering crime, gangs, local government, and Latino affairs, because that was a thing when people were trying to figure out, how do we cover Latinos? I know, we'll get a Latina to cover Latinos and we'll make it a thing. And then I was hired by Richard Polanco, and I ran the Latino caucus for the state legislature for about 3-4 years. Those were like dog years, at which point I decided that I would start my own firm, and VMA Communications was born. Background and experience, and really, you can see this through VMA, which started out just me and now is a 35-person firm. We've been in business almost 30 years. We do infrastructure development, focusing on environmental justice and equity, CEQA, NEPA outreach, community relations and construction communications, small business outreach and development, local hire initiatives. We also do public affairs. Over the years, we've worked with about 40 school districts and cities across California. And then we also have this niche of doing marketing communications for clean tech and biotech firms. And, you hire the right people, you end up with these niches. So we do a lot of brand development, management, government relations, and marketing toolboxes. So the cool thing is that I come to this position with kind of these disparate skills. I have the community outreach component, I have the public affairs component, and I also have this marketing dynamic, and that has seemed to serve this process pretty well. Significant projects, I take the big hairy ones, high-speed rail. I've worked on high-speed rail since 2003. I've worked on just about every alignment up and down the state. I've been yelled at by everyone up and down the state in a variety of languages, so I'm good at that. I've worked with Central Basin and other water agencies down in Southern California. I do a lot of work with LA County Public Works, specifically on wastewater and recycled water. We're doing a project right now at San Francisco PUC on the biosolids digester facility, where we have honestly just killed it on the local hire initiative. So we're really excited about that. We work with Metrolink, and we've done work with Kern Cog. We really have great relationships up and down the state. We're very project focused, we're very community focused. And so we really pride ourselves on trying to create those bonds between community and the projects, so that the projects become better for it, because it reflects the communities that they're going through. Some other projects, again, environmental justice. We do some work with CARB, with South Coast AQMD. We've done a lot of work on the AB 617 community steering committees, which has been a pretty heavy lift. With local governments, as I've said, about 30 school districts, 10 cities, 3 community colleges, and 3 special districts. And everything from, again, the government affairs side to facilities, to bond campaigns, et cetera. And then, of course, like I said, the clean tech and biotech marketing. So we've worked with Intel, Doosan, Karma, Stanadyne. I can talk fuel injection, people. And Ocular Science. So I'll note that my role here with the DCA is providing oversight, and really it's in conjunction. We have this really great dynamic where we're not in a silo. We work with DWR, we work with the PWAs. It really is a group, a family dynamic as we're moving these programs forward. So, you know, we provide, within DCA, I'm providing strategic communications, public engagement, education, social media, digital geo-targeting, informational videos, printed materials, website content, all the stuff. And that's largely public facing, but on occasion we need something internally as well, and I'll handle that as well, maybe a white paper, that sort of thing. And then from the standpoint of just, let's look at the DCA communications program. You know, I felt that it was important to kind of put out a slide that says, this is where we're coming from. And frankly, this is coming from you, your direction to Graham, to us, and even from the governor's office. You know, the core values is authentic, respectful engagement with transparency and an integration of community experience into the project development. And, you know, I have to say that I'm really proud of the work that the DCA and DWR have done, trying to integrate comments from community into the design aspects of this project. I've worked on a lot of projects, a lot of really tough ones, and that's not always the case. And the fact that, you know, folks walk through the door, you know, leadership saying, no, this is a mandate, this is where we need to be, has been really incredible and has made this experience beautiful. We really try to meet communities where they are. And when I say that, we're definitely doing a lot of work, the greater we, in the Delta, but we're also really trying to make sure that we're communicating with the local agencies and with the communities in Alameda, in Orange County, in Riverside and Los Angeles, because we want to make sure that everyone has an understanding of what this project does, because it really does have statewide implications. We develop communication plans, again, aligned with partner agencies. So like I said, we're not in a silo. We're working across the board. Everything we do is checked and cross-checked by our partners. We create systems and processes designed to execute the plans. I think that's one of those things that I've been able to bring as someone who has run a business and implemented a lot of these sorts of programs in a lot of public agencies. I knew what kinds of systems and processes needed to be implemented here. And so we've been able to create those systems. And then, you know, at the end of the day, we want to publish simple, impactful materials to support public understanding of the proposed project. This isn't an easy project, and it's even more difficult because it is complicated and there are a lot of thoughts on this project. So where we can really drill down and simplify information so that people can wrap their brains around it. Part of my goal is always to help people also learn the vernacular in that we're trying to talk with folks and we're speaking to them, hopefully in ways that they understand. We also want to kind of train folks to be able to have a peer-to-peer conversation with us, because you really create a much more fruitful dynamic if folks are able to come to us and say, you know, talk about the elements of the program and use the language in order to say, wouldn't it be great if you could do this thing differently? And again, using the vernacular, and it really does create some awesome opportunities. I think you saw it with the SEC, the Stakeholder Engagement Committee. There was a lot of ramping up and providing foundational information. Folks on the SCC were not fans of this project. They continue to not be fans of the project in general, but it was a good discourse. And the one thing that I think that they would say is that they appreciated at least getting information in their hand in a way that they could take it apart, understand it, and use it for whatever means they want to use it for. So I think that's it. Yes, that's it. Any questions?
Thank you very much. That's impressive. Do we have any comments or questions? We'll just roll them in together. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, President Palmer and Valerie. Very impressive resume. You know, first in your family to go through college, even though you know, you and I had discussions about allegiances. Yes, I know. But that's a local thing. But, you know, I think as an engineer, we think that the hard part is actually design and constructing it. But as you pointed out and over my career, I think, you know, winning the hearts and minds and actually, you know, educating the public on the importance of this very, very complicated process and just kind of show them that we really do consider all angles, not just, you know, the straight mechanics of the process. You know, and this is a heavily scrutinized program, as you know. So I think we're very fortunate to have you and the other very talented team that we have here on DCA. So I just want to thank you for, you know, continue to, you know, spearhead that message in that campaign.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just continue to be sort of floored at the talent the DCA seems to be able to attract. We're so lucky to have you. Clearly, you know, well qualified, and your breadth of experience, as well as, you know, the passion you clearly have for communication and communicating effectively on a program like this cannot be understated how important something like that is. So thanks. I actually have a quick question for you.
Of course.
Was there, you know, I mean, you've been on some high profile projects. Was there anything interesting or unique about this program, this project that you didn't expect coming in?
That I didn't expect. Honestly, I really appreciate, and it's going to sound like I'm playing to the audience here. I've worked on a lot of projects, but I said this earlier. Everyone here comes to this project, and perhaps it's because it's been around for a while, right? But you know, everyone's very project focused. If it's good for the project, let's do it. If it's not good for the project, let's not. And that's true of community as well. If it's good for community, let's make sure we're integrating it into the project. If it's not good for community, let's sort it out. There is a real focus on that. And so that makes my job much more pleasant. Instead of me having to slay dragons on a daily basis and fight with Graham or with board, you know, I'm able to focus on doing the work. And, you know, there are other projects, like I said, there's a lot of wrestling with engineers, God bless them. And, you know, that's not the case here.
Thank you, Valerie.
I'll just echo what others have said, and just let you know, I think VMA has really provided a place where we feel supported. I feel supported with the documentation that's out there and the very organized messaging, which is very important, I think, as this project can be complicated, but I think the easy messaging makes it for others to understand and follow along with us and provide us with the right input that we need more. So very appreciative of your work and your team. Thank you
so much.
I appreciate everything the others have said, and how did we find you? I mean, it's kind of hard to find a person with that kind of background.
Well,
Or did you find us?
mega projects are mega projects, and you tend to find that tunnels happen both in transportation and in water conveyance. And so there was someone who used to work on high-speed rail who had been working over here who called me and said, I think we need you over here. And again, the nice part is that again, we all play well with others. And so it's been a pretty seamless transition, you know, and, you know, again, I work side by side with Janet, and the two of us we think very similarly. We twitch the same way when something comes up. We have the same instincts. So it's been a really nice dynamic across the organizations as well.
This, as you know, is a very difficult process that we're going through for a long time, various iterations through the years. And so to have someone like yourself that always keeps the positive spin on things, no matter what you run into, there's always a positive response, and that's valuable. I appreciate your outlook on it.
Thank you.
Director Martin has something to say. Gary, you
Let me
may
put
be
my
on mute.
mic, okay, you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
First, before I talk about Ms. Martinez, I just want to thank Claudia and Graham for having this feature on our board on a regular basis. It is really one of my favorite things, and this is one of the best we've had. And Valerie, you know, others have said you've had an impressive background. I think that's really understating it. You feel like a neighbor to me. I mean, I spent many years working in Norwalk, and when you talk about Whittier and Montebello and all those areas down there, that's really home for me. And you know, you started off on the right foot, engineering, but actually, all things happen for a reason, and it seems to me your skill package far exceeds what we would normally see in an engineering position, no matter how you go on your position. So we're very fortunate to have you. Tremendously varied background, a lot of challenging assignments, and this has to be one that ranks right up there with the others you've worked on. And so I'm very I knew that was a reason why I really liked your performance on the project. When I see your background, it's clear to me you're really an outstanding choice for our project, and we're very fortunate to have you. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you very much. By the way, side note is that both of my kids are engineers. So while I couldn't do the lift, I loaded them up. One's a software engineer, the other one's a civil engineer. So
Yeah, I love the draft
in a
person
pinch.
line in your resume, by the way.
I just wanted to mention, having worked with you with the Stakeholders Engagement Committee, it was a joy, a difficult joy, but a joy nonetheless. And I think that everyone involved appreciated your ability to help make things clear, even difficult things for all of us at times, but the clarity and the ability to really work it through so that everybody could understand, no matter what our levels of engineering were, that we could all work with it. And of course, also the way you worked with the rest of the staff who helped to present, like Phil and that. So it was really, to me, it was a highlight to be able to spend that couple of years working with you on that SEC. So thank you so much. Do we have any public comment? Okay, then thank you, Valerie, for all you do, and hey, keep doing it. Okay, great. Then let's go on, please, to, since you're on again still, the communication and outreach update.
Thank you, President Palmer. Also, we have Janet Barbieri with us today, who leads all the communication efforts for the Department of Water Resources. So this is two of the three, and then we also have Rebecca Nichols on the line, which I think is also going to be participating, contributing. So this is the team. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Janet Barbieri. It's nice to see everyone. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. We thought it would be a good opportunity today to just roll through with Val's great foundation there a little bit in detail about what our communications program looks like. And so the three of us will do that. So I think the very first thing is to talk about what our objectives are. There's two buckets here. The first one is that we are really working to build awareness about the project and an understanding about the project, but also about the processes, the permitting, planning and design processes, and then also about the project's purpose and need. And as everyone knows, it is a complicated project. It is a controversial project. And so we have an obligation to the public to make sure that we do our job to provide information to help ensure transparency in the project. And we do that in part by providing materials that are accessible to people, that are responsive to their needs and their interests and their concerns. We also have recognition that, as much as we want to try to encourage where we can that level of understanding about the need for the project. We also know that there are people that have concerns about the project. And we also just are aware that, our job is to work in good faith, to provide information and access to information, access to the public participation processes. And we also know that people who are working in good faith may nonetheless continue to disagree, and that's okay. Our job is really to just be a conduit for information and access to the project and to the program. So I wanted to also reinforce that we are a team and we all work together very seamlessly in the communication program. So we have the department working together with the DCA, working together with the public water agencies and your communications offices, and then of course the state water contractors. And we do not work in silos. My job is, well, alternatively traffic cop or orchestra conductor. I try to be orchestra conductor as much as possible. But we do have a big program and a big team. And so our objective is to really make sure that all of those pieces are working well together, and that we're putting information out that is complementary, and that, we're putting that information out in a way that makes sense and is, responsive to what people need. We do have a number of different focus areas in terms of how we put information out into the world. There is public information and public participation. We try to do outreach and education as well. We do communicate and make our resources available to the media. We have the community benefits program that is very important. We have consultants that help us with outreach to EJ communities and disadvantaged communities. And then we also have a focus on tribes. And of course, Anacita is here and we'll talk about, more about that in a minute. So in terms of audiences, there's of course the Delta communities, that includes the various town councils and community organizations and NGOs, the tribal outreach. And again, Anacita will talk about that, but just to acknowledge that there is the government to government consultation, and then separately informal outreach and information. The environmental justice and disadvantaged communities. There's the statewide, regional, and local media, local, state, and federal elected officials, and of course, all of the public water agencies' service areas. And when it comes to the different buckets, there's sort of the three main ones. There's information, and so there's a lot of information about the project. We try to make that as accessible and readable as possible. So we have a lot of different types of materials that we use, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Different fact sheets, videos, or e-blast updates, animations. We try to come up with materials that sort of meet people where they are, because not everyone takes in information the same way. So we try to provide a lot of different types of informational materials so that people can find what they're looking for. In terms of outreach, that's more about how we get the information out into the world, doing briefings, presentations, the conferences, and the tours. And then, of course, there's the public participation side of things, and that's where there are opportunities for public input. So public meetings, workshops, informational webinars, and that type of thing. So we have a couple of things that you've probably seen before. We have a toolkit that's on our website. And that has links to all of the materials that we have available. So, it's all there and available on the website, but sometimes things can be hard to find. It can get buried. So we put that into a toolkit there. And then we also have a fact sheet that just describes our public outreach and engagement that we've been doing since 2019. And that would give you a little bit more background about, in depth and the types of work that we've been doing for the last, 3.5 years. Before I turn things over to Val, there were a couple things I wanted to mention. One is our environmental justice focused outreach. We do have a consulting firm, Ag Innovations. They have been helping us for several years now, and it is their job to help us reach communities in the Delta primarily, but also statewide. And they started out by doing a pretty deep research project. They interviewed statewide experts. They did the Your Delta, Your Voice survey. You probably remember that from several years ago. They had about a little more than 2,000 respondents. lately, what they have been focusing on is, part of the best practices that they developed as a part of their initial research, their initial foundation, was meeting people where they are with information that they want to hear. And so they spend a lot of time in the community, going to farmers markets and festivals, church events and food pantries, and all sorts of different community events, and they bring materials that are pretty creative. They have seed packets, they have scroll pens, they have coloring books and crayon packets, and those all have information available on them. But really, they spend a lot of time talking to people, and that's been really, really helpful. And then the last thing I wanted to mention before turning it over to Val is we have been doing quite a bit of work in coordinating with the Public Water Agency communications departments and their comms experts. And we really wanted to try to tailor where we can the information. Every agency, as you all know, has its own portfolio, sort of its own audiences, its own communication needs. And so we wanted to try to be as helpful as possible in providing your agencies with information that works in their programs. And we have been able to see some pretty interesting results in terms of packaging content for local agencies. And this is just one example of some of the mastheads that have resulted from that, but it's been really productive so far. So I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Val.
Okay, and yeah, I mentioned previously that we really are, this is a statewide project, right? And there are huge impacts to folks up and down in a variety of different ways. And so we've really worked to try to ensure that we're helping people in all parts of the state understand why this project is important, what this project means. And so we've been creating customized fact sheets for our partners that speak to, and frankly, honestly, they're a great cheat sheet for us as well. So that when we're in the area, we can talk about in Santa Clarita or in Mojave, how much water do you get from the State Water Project? How many residents are you actually serving? What does this mean? What does the map look like? Obviously, they know this information, but their staff, sometimes their board members, it's a great reminder. And when we're talking to other folks throughout the state, they say, well, is this just us or whatever? We're able to talk about these individual regions. But it's been really terrific to be able to coordinate with your PIOs so that we could get that information and start pushing out some editorial information in local newspapers, in digital e-blasts, that sort of thing, so that again, we're sending consistent information to and similar situation to or information to all these different entities. We're also now, I think you've all seen the monthly email updates that we're doing on DCA activities. The thing that I have learned through the years is that while we're working and working and working, and we have benchmarks once every 6 months or every 3 months or maybe once a year, when we actually go out and go big, people forget. So on the mega projects like this, people will often say, is that thing still happening? It's definitely still happening. And so we've this little monthly email that we send out to different folks at the PWAs, to staff as well, is to make sure everyone knows we're achieving, we're hitting our marks, there's work happening, and the project is progressing. As I've said, and as Janet has emphasized, there's a desire to really keep folks engaged, but also understanding the details. Some folks just want to know that there's a project, but some folks really want to know how it works. And so where we tend to delineate some of the lines is obviously DCA focuses more on the design, engineering and construction. So, our information typically is focused on that. So our Closer Look series, You know, we've talked about the engineering, the design, and the logistics around the construction of intakes, traffic management in the North Delta, because that's a significant issue. We heard that at the SEC. Lawn shafts, what does the footprint look like? What, you know, how is that going to move forward? Pile driving, there has been a complete redesign of how we're doing intakes in order to minimize the kind of pile driving that is more disruptive. Seismic resiliency, soil testing, the Bethany complex, that's something that's coming out that's new. And then we have a complementary closer look video that goes along with those fact sheets, so that we're hitting people in different directions. Some people want something that they can stick in their binder and read and be one with that. Some people want something that's going to float in front of them, that maybe, you know, they're more of a visual learner or they're a auditory learner. This gives them that space to have something, allows us to tell them the story. One of the things that we're really excited about is our geo-targeting. So what we know to be true, and Director Estremera is that he often makes this comment as he and I are talking, is that everything is local. People don't want to know if they're from Northern California, what's happening in Southern California. I mean, there's a basic, you know, desire to understand, but really they want to dig down into what's impacting them. And so what we've started doing in the last handful of months is refining our messaging so that if we're talking to folks in Alameda County, we're talking about issues in Alameda County. We're talking about data and project specifics that are of interest to folks in Alameda. Same thing with Santa Clarita, same thing with Orange County, same thing with San Diego. We want to make sure that it makes sense to folks, that they're going to click through. So we're getting some really great responses. You know, we're geo-targeting Facebook, which is Meta. In September alone, we got 76,000, almost 77,000 impressions with over 15,000 video plays. That's crazy. We're also doing digital marketing through Google. Typically, a click-through rate of 0.08 or 0.8 is actually terrific. And we're getting rates of like 2%. So we're doing really great. And we're even seeing, you know, people come through to our website and visiting to find out more about the project and about how it affects, you know, them in particular. So this is working. And then, you know, perhaps we recall, it was so long ago, the SEC had the privilege of working with Chair Palmer and with alternate director Barbara Egan. There we go. Sorry. On leading the SEC. I was the facilitator. It was a phenomenal experience because we had a lot of folks in the room. Just about all of them were opposing the project, but it was a true, authentic desire to have a discussion about, you know, what do you know about what's happening in your community and how can you provide that information to us so that in the event we end up building something, we're able to do it in a way that minimizes impacts. And so, you know, again, we had 20 community members that were participating. It represented, you see the interests that they represented, everything from, you know, geography to, you know, recreation and sports fishing interests, public safety, and we had some experts in the room. We ended up having 19 SEC committee meetings, and that was, it was quite a lift. And then, you know, that went through, it was for over, you know, 2 years, from November 2019 to December 2021, with 65 agendized SEC presentations. All of those presentations are still online. Again, the folks who were in the room the one thing that they said was getting access to this information was huge. And the fact that we were able to create that library of materials online has really continued to be a benefit to our community outreach efforts. And tours, hats off to Claudia and to Yadi and, you know, Graham and Carrie. They go on these tours and they provide so much information, boots on the ground to folks who are interested, usually our partners, sometimes regulatory agencies. We've seen close to 200 attendees so far. And again, across the board, the comment is, you know, some people are for it, some people are against it, but everyone gets, appreciates the perspective of actually being out in the Delta and seeing what, you know, the proposed alignment looks like, seeing what the proposed components look like. We play videos during the tour that gives information about the intakes and about, you know, all the different aspects. And you know, without question, the tours have really seen a lot of success as we've rolled those out.
Thanks, Val. So now we just want to talk a little bit about some of the work that the state water contractors have done. I'd like to ask Rebecca Nicholas to jump in here and just give us a little bit of background on some of that.
Yeah, thanks, Janet. Hi, Valerie. Rebecca Nicholas. I'm here today on behalf of the state water contractors. We run very closely side by side with both GWR and DCA to make sure that we're bringing along our contractor family and their ratepayers. And so as part of that, we periodically track public sentiment. The most recent statewide poll we did was in February of this year. We ran a poll from February 9th through the 16th statewide, phone and online, both in English and Spanish. And I think the results are remarkable and pretty telling of the communications work that we've been doing and all of the sort of boots on the ground work that you've been doing in your districts. So from June 2019 to February 2023, we maintained a 76% total favor for the Delta Conveyance Project. That's statewide. We went down a tick in total opposed from 16% to 13%. And then we went up a tick in those who don't really know where they stand on the project. And for us, that really demonstrates both, you know, an acknowledgement of the work that we've done to get the word out, and then opportunity to sort of continue whittling down the folks who don't know how they feel about it, and those who oppose, or, you know, in some cases will always oppose. But I think what's interesting for this group is that every single region gave this project extremely high marks, including Sacramento, North Coast folks, Northern folks. And so as part of this, to sort of complement the effort, we continue to host legislative briefings, legislative tours. We make sure that we cascade all the information, all the good work that Janet and Valerie are doing through our pretty significant communications channels and social media channels, and really just try to help the public water agencies communicate to their ratepayers about the value of this project, especially in the context of the broader state water project. We've been really great to work with you all. I think just before I close out and hand it back to Janet, one quick finding from this survey that we thought was really interesting is that the voter concerns over infrastructure water investment and the condition of existing infrastructure increased from 49% in 2019 to 68% in 2023. And that's a huge jump and a huge opportunity that we see to really lean in on the value and importance of maintaining and upgrading our infrastructure.
Rebecca, Just have a couple final slides here. I thought it might be helpful to put, to quantify a little bit of some of the work that we've done. So we pulled some of the numbers on the work that we do. So you can see everything there. I won't belabor it, but I just did want to let you know that we do work very hard to get information out into the community. It's important for us to do what we can to provide information and make it as accessible to people as possible. And I'll just end here by saying, in terms of next steps on communication and outreach, we are expecting to see a final EIR by the end of the year. And so we will help provide information when that document comes out. The department will consider project approval after that. And so we will help communicate related to that. There is a community benefits program. I didn't talk at all about that. I think you all are aware of it. We will bring that back into the public purview again at the beginning of next year. Have some public input related to that. And then of course, there's the ongoing permitting processes that are coming along in the future on the project. So I'll stop there. We've provided you with a lot of background information, and any of us would be happy to answer questions.
Okay, I'm going to start at this end.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I have a quick question, and well, I think we have that 3% opportunity from opposed to don't know, so I think jump on that. But to the point of infrastructure and our most recent jolt this week, are we thinking about how we can use this as an opportunity? I mean, it's right where, the Delta is. So what are you all thinking about that?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that because I meant to talk about it. We did do a digital article with some pretty good information about the seismic resiliency nature of the project. We did that, I think it was in July. And so we will re-up that in social media and push that information out. That was one of the packages of content that we pushed out into the PWAs and then on our sort of statewide channels. So we have a lot of good background information about that. And, we do try to be nimble like that. So if things come up that, are an opportunity for us to help reinforce some of our existing materials or existing messaging, we do try to jump on that as quickly as possible. So you'll see that today or tomorrow, probably.
Thank you for that. And also just, I think when I just got out, seismic has always been one of those things of interest to me related to this project, and to have ambassadors or that external information, not necessarily only coming from us, but from those that are experts in this area. Not that you all aren't, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, Dr. Jones would be great.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, there was a CBS report yesterday that had a lot of really interesting quotes from the USGS. And I can't remember the name of the gentleman that they quoted, but that's exactly, I think, what I thought too when I saw that it was really helpful information that sort of we had laid the foundation with our, information, and that just helped sort of reinforce that. So
That was CBS?
yeah,
Thank you.
I can send that to you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, because I have had discussions with people who said, oh, there's no real seismic risk. You're not. Yes. Anyone else in the boardroom? No. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, President Palmer. I appreciate the comprehensive review. There's a lot of info in here, so I'll probably look at it a little bit more. But I guess the first thing that kind of jumped out at me was, supporting the public water agencies piece. And I was just kind of wondering, do y'all aggregate the amount of public outreach that actually each agency does? Because it'd be kind of interesting to hear, what they've done and what's kind of worked for them as we kind of think about our, campaign for our area as this project rolls forward. Would be extremely helpful not to have to duplicate some of the efforts.
Exactly. And we don't aggregate that in terms of sort of reporting, but we are working very closely with all of those communications departments so that anytime we have information to make public, asking them to put those through their channels, because we know that they all have, really excellent methods of reaching their ratepayers, their constituents, their areas. And so we try to take advantage of that as much as possible.
And I want to thank you. Sometimes when I've addressed some people, you guys have been really forthcoming in giving me information, which has been very useful. Okay, anybody on the, on Zoom? Okay, do we have any public comment?
Palmer, we do not.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Jen.
appreciate it.
So much.
You, just one quick footnote. I know that this is a very active board with a lot of relationships. It just as Chair Palmer just said, if there's ever a need for information, for a packet, let us know and we will provide that for you.
More than you ever wanted. Yes. You guys are fabulous. And I just thank you so much for what you do. Okay, looking forward to this next one. We've got the DCP Tribal Consultation Update.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Anacita Augustinus, and I'm the Tribal Policy Advisor at the Department of Water Resources. So excited to be here. Thank you, Carrie, and President and Board of Directors. Well, tribal consultation and engagement. And hearing the earlier presentation about our communication and outreach, and I'm just really pleased to say that the DCA, Department of Water Resources, has really spent a lot of time on what is our engagement process in tribal consultation and how to do this right. And so I'm really pleased to provide you that update and that information. Our department has been very actively engaged in our department with 13 tribes that we consider actively consulting tribes. And we also refer to them, if you were to look at the EIR, as culturally affiliated tribes within the Delta region. We have conducted over 150 government to government consultation meetings. And even at the onset of COVID and the government shutdown, many of the tribes at that time requested through the governor's office letters to not only the governor, but Secretary Crowfoot, our director, to pause consultation. That did result in a pause of CEQA, but it did not apply to the Delta Conveyance Project. Many of the tribes were upset at that because, as you know, they are under-resourced tribes, and they felt that they didn't have the capacity to continue that ongoing government to government consultation, but they did so. We applied our best practices through Zoom calls, and that was a little bit of a struggle at the beginning to have, as you know, everyone doing consultation over the Zoom protocols. But we got through that, and we were able to continue those deep discussions, develop opportunities for site visits, and also develop the opportunities of obtaining the tribal feedback we needed to develop the documents and the information to draft an EIR. And we are really pleased that a lot of the EIR comments have included tribal comments, and not only from the actively consulting tribes, but other tribes throughout the state. We have also committed to sending formal letters and emails to consulting tribes that inform them on a regular basis of the project timelines, different milestones that we reached, various types of updates. And now we are at that moment in AB 52 consultation of the upcoming closure of CEQA consultation. And as many of you know, CEQA is a formal consultation process under the amended CEQA of AB 52. And AB 52 did usher in a new amended description and classification of a tribal cultural resource. And so that was something new within this project, and also a new process for many of the tribes. And this is a major project, as we all know, and CEQA at AB 52 at this level with this amount of tribes covering many over jurisdictions that overlap within the Delta was really difficult. And so we were fortunate that the consultation process has continued, and that we are now at that step of finalizing the EIR with tribal participation. In addition to the outreach that we have done, we have committed a a tribal engagement website on the Department of Water Resources webpage. This website is very extensive. It includes not all the beginning consultation, and what we did with knowing when we were going to do the Delta Conveyance Project and that it would fall under AB 52 consultation, we elected to do a series of pre-AB 52 meetings. And this was a somewhat new process that DWR engaged in, and it's now considered a best practice that's and been almost institutionalized not only at DWR but other state agencies, is engaging in pre-AB 52 informational meetings to let tribes know that if you are not on the AB 52 consultation list, that gives you an opportunity to do so. And it also commits to that early engagement of what is meaningful consultation. So this project tribal engagement website includes those early meetings. It includes those early agendas and all the presentations. We also, in addition to the government-to-government consultations that we conducted, this website includes the annual informational meetings that we conducted on behalf of the tribes for information. And those informational meetings were open to a statewide audience and also to tribal NGOs that were there assisting other tribes in understanding the nature of this project. We also were participating in on an invitational basis with a tribal coalition meetings, and many of the folks here seated to my right, Graham and Carrie, were also considered invitees to provide their subject matter expertise. And a lot of this was aligned with what was happening during the DCA process of the SEC meetings. As you saw on one of the slides, there were tribal governmental representatives participating in the SEC process. So those tribal governmental representatives coordinated with DWR and to revisit some of those SEC agenda items and review those informational items for the larger tribal community. And so there was an opportunity there to reinforce the information that was being heard in real time within the same month, in fact, sometimes within the same week, which was a big lift on behalf of some of our DCA partners. But it was very well welcomed by the tribes and much appreciated, because it was an opportunity for that deeper dive. So when they saw the information at the SEC meetings, they were able then to look at this information and ask more questions and have a better understanding of it. So those were the coalition meetings. We conducted other types of workshops, informational meetings, and several types of tours. And we are continuing to arrange for tours now. And so, much appreciation to your staff for the work that you're doing to support the types of tours that we're scheduling with the tribal communities. So in terms of our tribal outreach and where we are, Department of Water Resources remains committed to tribal engagement. As I mentioned, we are at the steps now of potential closure of the CEQA consultation. We're asking tribes who have engaged with us over the 150 government-to-government consultations to reach a point of mutual closure, signifying the goodwill, the good faith, and the due diligence that Department of Water Resources has engaged in. And despite that potential closure of the CEQA process, our message to the tribal governments and tribal communities is that consultation does not end. That consultation is an ongoing process and it will continue. We are under the umbrella of the California Natural Resources Agency's consultation policy, as well as Department of Water Resources' own engagement policy, which gives opportunities for tribes to continue to consult with us as we work on these next steps and continue this engagement process. What we're looking at now is regarding post-approval implementation of the mitigation measures and what is in the proposed EIR. And one thing that has been, front and foremost from all the tribes is the tribal cultural resources protection. And what we have learned through our engagement process is the importance of the Delta to the tribes that have been that this is their ancestral lands. Many of them, if you look at a map of the Delta, you're not going to find tribal lands that are under their jurisdiction any longer. They have been removed due to state practices and federal practices to other lands outside of the Delta, but the Delta itself remains a homeland. It remains a sacred area. And then when they look at the levies, they look at ancestral lands that have been built upon their ancestral homes. And so this is something that is really important to the tribes, and Department of Water Resources is listening. We're incorporating in our mitigation measures outline how to avoid and minimize these cultural resources impacts, and we are continuing to do so. And through site tours, through the various types of investigations, tribes have been assisting us. And I do want to say that tribes have also noted that based on the alternatives that were developed by the DCA, that we did make those impactful changes based on what we were hearing during those real-time consultations. And so those are significant. And above all, with tribes, as we heard earlier from other communities, this is for tribes, it's an unwelcome project, because they do not want to see any further destruction to their ancestral lands. But despite that direct message to Department of Water Resources, they have chosen to stay engaged and to be a part of the CEQA process for the consultation for their tribal cultural resources protection. And so that really is, where we are at the moment, and we will continue to, work with tribes, and of course, ongoing, even after the certification of the EIR. This is a project that will continue in the future. And so I do believe that what we do with the mitigation and what we can do with the community benefits to assist tribes and incorporate their perspectives and their desires will be greatly enhanced. So I appreciate this opportunity to give you that update, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
That is, your role is impactful and important and incredibly appreciated. I know it's not always easy on anybody's part with this particular project, but the role of you and the tribes is crucial. So do we have any questions from the board in here? Miguel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Agustinez, for presenting. And as President Palmer said, it's not an easy job, and you've taken on this task. So thank you, DWR and yourself. Have any tribes, have there been any conversations with tribes about tribal monitoring program? Are we there yet or not?
Yes, we are there. We are working with tribes in monitoring, and I'm very pleased to say that there is a commitment on behalf of the DWR to have that monitoring and those site visits being compensated, because we are working with tribes as subject matter experts, and they're coming to us with this subject matter experts and also tribal ecological knowledge that is so important to really develop what is an appropriate mitigation measure. And with all the new state policies that are coming down, not only through legislation, but through our governor's actions to incorporate tribal knowledge, nature-based solutions as a policy planning tool for water management adaptation, it's very timely that we're able to do so. In addition, the Department of Water Resources has developed a public entity agreement contracting process, and this is an opportunity for us to develop this direct contracting on a one-to-one basis with federally recognized tribes. For the non-federally recognized tribes who we're working with, we're also being able to do contracting with those tribes, but not through a public entity agreement. As I mentioned, we are actively consulting with 13 tribes. Several of those tribes are non-federally recognized tribes.
Very much.
Thank you, President Palmer, and thank you, Ms. Agustinez. This was, I just want to just say we appreciate the work you do, DWR, more, all the engagement we've been doing with tribes and the local communities is such an important part of this project, obviously, if we want any semblance of success. at the end of this. So thank you. I did have a specific question and out of curiosity, are there any tribes, interested tribes outside of the Delta that have been engaged on the project that you've been engaged with at all?
Yes, we have actually had tribes from the very top of the state to the bottom of the state. And we had tribes in the San Diego County that have asked to be kept apprised. And they came on very early because they said, well, this is a state water project. We don't get a lot of surface water delivery, but we do get it from other third-party delivers. And so we want to know what is going to be the potential impacts. The Northern California tribes, when I say Northern California, I'm saying above the Sacramento watershed, are very interested because, as you know, many of those tribes have been working very hard to undam the Klamath, with quite great success this past month on having one of the dams removed, but very concerned about those impacts. And even though there is that federal project with the Shasta Reservoir, the tribes up there in the northern part follow the state water project and do believe that there are impacts, and so they have been listening in and been kept apprised.
Else? Nope. Anybody on Zoom? No? Okay, do we have any public comment? No public comment. Well, thank you so much, because it's important for all of us to remember what's going on, and an eye-opener for many of us, I'm sure. And we appreciate your efforts, which are tremendous.
Thank you, President. It's my pleasure to be here and to report out. And also, I do think that that message has been received by the tribes. And I think that, an ongoing commitment by the board as we go through these various, changes in where we are at the milestones, especially now that we look at mitigation and what that means. And then I do think that the community benefits is going to be important to make sure that a tribal perspectives are included in that. So, and thank you again.
You, and that helps to keep it in front of us as well. Thank you. Okay, so that is it for the discussion items. We're now on to staff reports.
Thanks, President Palmer. As always, a written report in the packet. Just wanted to highlight the end of the legislative cycle. So as you're likely aware, the governor had until the end of last week to decide whether to sign the bills. So we're in the process of reviewing all the bills that were signed that will become law January 1st, just to make sure we'll remain in compliance. Any note will be brought back to this board for discussion as appropriate. Did want to provide one update. We've been discussing SB 537 for the last couple of months. This is a bill that would have provided some additional flexibility for multi-jurisdictional bodies like this to meet remotely. Unfortunately, it did not make it out of the legislature, but may be considered next calendar year. Thank you.
Hopefully, we do know how we're supposed to be functioning, and I'm sure you will keep us clean.
That's a very good point, President Palmer. For us, it would basically means that the rules we've been operating under this year will remain in effect, and a lot of appreciation goes to Claudia and her team in keeping these remote meetings moving so smoothly. Thank you.
Okay, then we're on to Treasurer's report.
Hi, President Palmer. This is Bernadette Robertson reporting on behalf of Katana Kasani. This report is for the first quarter of fiscal year 24. The beginning balance of the authority at July 1, 2023 was $1,412,837. The receipts for this quarter totaled $8,638,822, which represents contributions from the DCO. We paid $8,223,031 in disbursements for the authority's expenses, and the cash balance as of September 30 was $1,828,628. For your balance sheet, total receivables was $2,506,967 as of September 30th, and for the same period, there were $84,008 in prepaid expenses and $3,538,164 in accounts payable. The report has all the details that you need, including details of invoices that were paid and also the details of all the receivables and accounts payable. And that's my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Nice and clean. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Do we have any comments from the board? Nope. Anybody on Zoom? Any public comments?
No public comments.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Ms. Robertson. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, then moving on to the DWR Environmental Managers Report.
Thank you, President Palmer. I know my reports have gotten a little repetitive in the last few months, but I will just repeat it again that we are working to finalize the environmental impact report, and we are on schedule to release that report in December of this year. I did also want to mention, I know that many people are following the status of the geotechnical investigations, and if the public particularly is interested in where we're coming or where we're going in upcoming months, we do have a map on our website with all of that information, a rolling map of 2 weeks look ahead. So that's all for me. If there are any questions.
Great, any questions? Nope, any questions from Zoom? Any public questions?
No public comments.
Okay, great, thank you so much. Now this comes on to verbal reports. Do we have any verbal reports? Nope, none, okay. Then future agenda items. Does anyone on the board have any or otherwise have any future agenda items you'd like to see brought up? No, okay. All right, this is time for public comment, and I'm gonna read this because I have been in areas where there've been some Zoom bombing, so maybe we don't have any, that'd be great. But I'm going to still read this. So members of the public may address the authority on matters that are within the authority's jurisdiction, but not on the agenda at this time. Speakers are generally limited to 3 minutes each. However, the chair may further limit this time when reasonable based on the circumstances. Persons wishing to speak may do so remotely through the electronic meeting link by scanning the QR code and or teleconference number when recognized by me. The DCA encourages public comments and requests that speakers present their remarks in a respectful manner. I sound very teacherly. Okay, within established time limits and focus on issues which directly affect the DCA or are within its jurisdiction. So those are the rules. Okay, do we have any public comments at this time?
President Palmer, we have not received any public comments for any of the items on the agenda.
Or off the agenda? This is
Or
the-
off the
This is
agenda.
the off the agenda
Or for
stuff.
this particular item.
Okay, great. And nobody in the room who wishes to address? Okay, then, ladies and gentlemen, I declare us adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Thanks, everybody.
bye-bye.